Hello there, I am Man in Yellow, and in this video I would like to talk a bit about changes I'd like to see for phobies in order to improve the game. Of course, before we can really talk about how to improve the game, we first have to figure out what the problems with the game are. In my opinion, the game currently has 5 problems, which I have listed here in order of how important I think they are to fix. Currently, I would say that the biggest problem for the game is the new player experience. Players are not that likely to stick around, I would imagine. I don't know the actual stats for it or anything like that. But what I do know is that I have introduced a couple people to phobies, and none of them have stuck around for the game. And the reason for that is quite simple. It's because everything about being a new player sucks in phobies, outside of like the excitement of being new to a game. But everything else feels terrible. It feels like you are going to have to play for a very, very long time to even have a chance at catching up to the older players. It feels like the system is pretty much rigged against you. You are placed in a ranked system where you rank up super fast because you play against AI opponents or bot opponents, whatever you want to call it. And then you end up at a rank where you don't really belong, and then you suddenly play against people who are way higher ranked than you are or should be, and therefore they have better collections, much higher levels, and they just have more game experience. So that just feels terrible as a new player. In addition to that, you also don't get it doesn't feel like you get very many new things after the first couple times that you open each pack. You build your collection pretty damn slowly, which is not very exciting. Essentially, the new player experience has a couple problems, but then all of the other problems down here also tie into the new player experience, making it very, very bad. The matchmaking and the rank system, of course, is also part of the new player experience, but that is a problem for all players, essentially. Not just new players, also casual players and people who want to take the game seriously. The current rank system is just kind of terrible, and the same thing goes for matchmaking. The rank system right now only encourages you to play a lot of games. It doesn't encourage you to be a skilled player at all. In addition to that, the matchmaking is just terrible. If you just wait around in queue for a little too long, suddenly you are in matches where the opponent is 600 or 700 points higher or lower than you, which is a full rank. That is just ridiculous. I have been in Sum of All Fears 3 before and gotten players who were in Doomsday, and that is just not fair at all. They are going to be way lower level, they're going to have worse gameplay, and they will likely have worse collections too. So that just is not a fair match, and it's not fun for either player, which is why I think this is the second biggest problem. It not only affects new players a lot, but it also affects even the current players. And I would say this is most likely the thing I have seen most people quit the game for, or at least out of the ones that have told us why they quit the game. It is that they go into a game and suddenly they're facing someone who's 10 levels higher than them. Then they get out of that game after being destroyed. They go into another game and the same thing happens again and again and again. And suddenly they stop playing the game, because that just is not fun at all. Next up, we have the reward systems. These are the systems that give you new phobies and give you cards and experience and so on. And all of these systems feel kind of terrible. The quest system feels terrible. The pack system feels terrible. Season rewards don't feel worth it at all. They take way too many games to complete, which means you are pushing all casual players out of the game essentially, which you shouldn't do for obvious reasons. Casual players are the biggest, what do you want to call it, customer base or whatever you want to say for a game. So pushing them out of it is just not very good. Currently, in order to get a gold pack, which is the good pack out of the season rewards, you have to play 168 games in 28 days, I believe it is, which is 6 games every day. That is way, way, way too much. That is 1.5 to 2 hours worth of gameplay for people who probably have a job. Maybe they have kids, and maybe they are also, playing other games, or they have other things they want to do in their spare time. So that just is not realistic if you want to keep a casual player base, in my opinion. But the packs also feel terrible. People spend a month or sometimes even 2 months just to save up for packs and then they get nothing from them, or they get terrible phobies from them, which also ties into the phobie balance a little bit. So all of those systems are just terrible. The quest system is also really bad because you feel like you're forced to play phobies which are not optimal for your games. So you're just essentially throwing away games just to complete your quests. People even match up with each other, like they find each other either on Discord or some other chat group, and then they queue at the same time to complete quests together, just because the quest system is that annoying and toxic to deal with. So that is another one that is also really bad, like a part of the reward system that feels really bad also. And then finally we have map design and phobie balance. I would say these are lesser problems than the other ones because these matter more if you are already an advanced player. They don't matter quite as much if you are new to the game, or if you are a casual player, or if you're just bad at the game. They matter a lot less because realistically it doesn't matter that much if a map is not that well designed if you have no idea what you're doing. And the same thing goes for phobie balance. So I would say they are lesser problems than the first three, but they are still problems that they should fix. I should also say for phobie balance, that is a problem that has moved down a lot, because I think the last balance patch did a lot of good for the game. It made it a lot healthier for pretty much everyone, but especially players at the top, in my opinion. Got a lot better, so it's like a way healthier game. There are still 2 phobies that I would like to see nerfed, but the main reason why I still have phobie balance on here is because I want to see a lot of buffs to phobies. Around somewhere between 1/3 to half of the phobies in the game feel like they are either super niche, straight up bad, or they just don't really have a role. And that is pretty unfun and unfortunate because, first of all, players are going to open those phobies and it's not that exciting to get a phobie that you know just isn't really going to see play. And second of all, pretty much all of the phobies in the game have really cool designs, and it's obvious that there has been put a lot of time into them. So having them just be nearly unplayable or super like niche is not very good in my opinion. It would be way better if all phobies were at least somewhat playable, and then they have like a situation in which they are very strong. So you would be able to use whatever you have, and you should be able to essentially main any phobia in the game if you just fall in love with them. So those are the 5 main problems for the game in my opinion. And I have 8 changes that I'd like to see, which I think would help solve a lot of these problems, or at least make them way better. The first change that I'd like to see is to the ranked system. So I would like to see you remove the bonus points gains from win streaking. Currently, as a new player, you get into the game and you win streak against a bunch of bots and maybe also some other players, and then you end up at a way higher rank than where you belong. That is the kind of thing that I already talked about, and that is very unfun. In addition to this, I would also like to see that we lose or gain more points, like depending on the difference between us. So if I face someone who is in road or in what's it called, like in Doomsday, let's just say, and I'm Sum of All Fears, then they should gain more points and I should lose more points if that's how the match turned out. And if I win, I should gain less points and they should lose less because it's an unfair match. So I think I would like to see that too. In addition to that, I think they should either remove or completely rework the season reset, so that instead of resetting you to Sum of All Fears, it should set you to Sum of All Fears 3 if you are above that, or Doomsday 2 if you are a bit above that, instead of setting you completely down to the rank. Because currently, after a season reset for the first somewhere between like 2 or 3 days to a week, depending on the rank maybe, you are going to just crush your opponents if you are stronger than them, or you are going to get crushed if you are less strong than them. So it's essentially just like more advanced players beating up newer players or less advanced players, which is not very fun for either player. There's nothing fun about beating up someone who's way weaker than you, and there's also no fun in getting beat up, obviously, just because they have a better collection or levels or way more experience with the game. They could also choose to just, I've written steal, but it's not really steal, but they could change over to the system which games like chess use, which is just called the ELO rating system. we all know that that works. That is a very used system in several different games, but especially chess, and it would work great for phobies. I think that is a bit of a bigger change, or a bigger change, depending on what they want to do. But I definitely think they have to remove the bonus points gained from win streaking, because that will help new players a lot. This would of course, making all of these changes would make it a lot better for newer players, but it would also just make it better for everyone else in general, because you wouldn't have those matches where you just face someone who's way over leveled or way under leveled, which aren't fun. So those are the changes I'd like to see to the rank system. A small note is that you could maybe look at the option of moving the stat gains per level from 2% or 3% to 2%. Currently you gain 3% stats every level on your phobies. Maybe that should be 2% instead, because that would make it easier for new players to catch up. That also maybe creates some other problems though, so I don't know if they want to do that, but it could be an option to try that. Because it would, it would make it easier for a new player to catch up and compete with the players that have played for a long time. The only problem with it is that some players which are not very good at the game would drop down and still have very high levels, so the level difference would be higher, but it would matter less, I guess you can say. But a new player may not necessarily know that, so it feels pretty bad to them. So that's the downgrade or trade for doing a change like that. I didn't include it here because I'm not really sure if it's a good idea or not, but it's definitely an option that they could look at if they want to. Next up, we have a change where I would like to see AI or bots entering the game as opponents. This is an idea that Cast from the Discord came up with, and I really like this idea. Now, I will say I think this should be an optional thing that you can toggle on or off as you wish, which I also wrote down here. The idea is essentially that you can turn this option on, and then if the queue goes for a certain amount of time, let's just say that the right time is maybe 30 seconds, or maybe it's 25 or 35. I don't know exactly how long you want people to sit in a queue and wait for a game. But if it goes past that amount, then you would instead be paired with a bot or an AI opponent. And in those games, you would be able to complete quests. You will gain resources like tiers and XP, and it will just be normal playing, but your ranking would not be affected by it, because otherwise people would just want to try and beat up bots, obviously. So it would just be a place where you can get a game in case your queue is going for too long, and you will be able to face someone who you can do quests against without losing rating or gaining rating. So I think that would be a very good change for the game. This would mean that you no longer have to have those matches where one player is 500 to 700 points higher than the opponent. I think the highest I've seen was around 700, but I've seen quite a lot of matches where players are 500 or 600 points above the other one, which is just not fair at all. That is a huge ranking difference. So we want to delete those matches from the game, essentially, is what I'm getting at, because they are just not fair and they don't feel fun for anyone. So that would be the point of introducing the AI. It would both help a little bit with the quests, and it would help a lot with removing unfair matches, which is both scaring away newer players but also even older players. Of course, the AI would be scaled to your rank or to your power level. I think it makes the most it makes the most sense to scale it to your levels, I would think, but it could also just be scaled to rank, and then you just maybe make the AI a little bit over level compared to everyone, because the AI currently is really bad. I will also say I think it should be very clear if you are facing AI. They could do something like having the AI have a specific profile or avatar, whatever you want to call it, or they could just straight up put a banner under them which says this is a AI opponent or whatever, just so that you are certain that is what you are facing when you queue into them. For the third change, I want to talk a bit about season packs. I already mentioned them in the beginning, but currently you have to do 168 games in order to get the golden pack, which is way too much in my opinion. Honestly, even if it was 56 for the golden pack, I still think that would be too much. And that says a lot, because that is 1/3 of what it is right now, and I still think that would be too much. I think with this kind of game, you want casual players to feel like they can keep up with you and that they don't have to invest several hours into the game every single day, because you are just not gonna get like a lot of players that would otherwise play the game when you do this kind of thing. No one is going to play 168 matches while they still have a job and a family and like are maybe playing other games, even if they don't have a family but they're someone younger. 168 games is a stupid amount of time that you have to spend for it. That's 6 games per day. And by the way, you only get tiers for 5 games per day, so you're playing past your tier cap just to try and like complete this, which is just straight up stupid. I think they should reduce this all the way down to either it requiring 1 or 2 games per day, maybe 1.5. 2 is honestly still too much, I would say. So maybe 1 or 1.5 games per day would be realistic in my opinion. Like somewhere between 30 and 45 games maybe should be what it takes to get a gold pack. And then you just remove the silver and the bronze pack if you want to. You could also just keep them as like very low level packs or whatever if you want to do that. But I think they should do that. If a normal player can play 1 game every day, maybe they play it in their coffee break or they play it before they go to bed or something like that. And then they can keep up with the game and they will play it, they will be part of the community, and the game will have a lot more players. That is a lot healthier than everyone being scared away by this giant number of matches that you have to complete, which just isn't realistic to most people. So that is a pretty big change, I would say. Cast also had the idea that once you go past the required amount, you would just upgrade your pack further and further into getting you more cards, but you wouldn't get higher chances of new phobies. You would just be getting more cards as you play. That way you would still like encourage players to play a lot or grind if they want to, but they wouldn't feel forced to do so just in order to try and get a new phobie. I have actually heard from some players that they played for the season packs, like the gold packs, and then they just didn't get anything from them, and that made them either quit the game or they are only playing for like either the silver or even the bronze pack right now. I myself am not playing for the gold pack very often. I think I've only gotten the gold pack 2 or 3 times this year, and I don't really plan on getting it anymore, just because I don't really want to put that much time into the game with how it is right now, and 6 games is just way too much. Like, I also work a job and I also want to play other games and do other things, so this is just like way too much of a time requirement in my opinion. Whether you want to do 1 game per day or 1.5 games per day or what the right number is, I don't know, but 168 is way too high, and 100 is still too high in my opinion. So hopefully they do some changes to that. The other way you could change this would be to make the seasonal pack actually worth playing for, but I think that is a lot less good because you are still kind of forcing new players, or at least casual players, away from the game, which is not a good thing to do. For the 4th change, I would like to see the tier cap be raised by a lot. It could either be doubled or tripled compared to what it is right now. This may seem like a weird thing to want when I've just talked about wanting the game to feel a little bit less like grindy or better for casuals, but I don't think you have to do all of your tiers every day. That shouldn't really be the goal here. I would even like think about maybe you could even straight up remove the tier cap. I'm just a bit scared that people may start botting if you do that, but they can definitely raise the tier cap to at least double of what it is right now, and they could maybe even triple it in my opinion. Currently it feels like you are getting stopped from playing by the tier packs or by the tier cap. You like play 5 games and then the tier cap pops up and you feel like, okay, now the game doesn't want me to play anymore, and that feels terrible. The game should encourage you to play more, or maybe not even encourage you, but allow you to play more and grind if you want to, but you should not feel like you are forced to do so in order to compete with people or get new things. So that is kind of the change I would like to see with this. By raising the tier cap, that means that new players or just players who want to grind can really put in a lot of hours to the game and make it their main game if they want to, but you don't really feel forced to do so because there's no real like like you aren't going to get that many things out of the tier packs anyway. This just doesn't feel like the game is punishing you for playing anymore, which is what it feels like right now. If you max out your tier caps and you're playing past that, you kind of feel like the game is punishing you for enjoying it, which is like, that makes no sense. Finally, I would also like them to list the tier pack rates. It kind of feels a little bit like scummy, or whatever you want to call it, that they aren't listing those rates. Honestly, they could also list the rates for the seasonal packs. I don't know why they are hiding them. Like, you're not really tricking anyone or anything like that. We know that the rates aren't very good on them, so just show the rates. Like, it's fine. There's no reason to hide them. It just makes you seem like you are like trying to trick players or something, which is not a good look. Then we have the fifth change, which is to coffee packs. I just think we should have pity timers on coffee packs. This is something that pretty much every gacha game has. At least every good gacha game has like pity timers on their coffee packs. I don't know what the exact number this should be on our coffee packs. I would think that Dreadful should be 5 or something like that. So every 5 Dreadful packs you open, you are guaranteed to get an ultra rare if you haven't received one up until then. So something like that. There are a couple different systems you could go with. You could either just go with a flat rate, and then if you don't get them 5 times in a row or 4 times in a row, on the 5th one you are guaranteed to open an ultra rare. Or you could do the system where as you open the packs, it increases the rates for the higher rarity phobies, so that you become more and more and more likely to get an ultra rare from a Dreadful as you like miss. So it would improve as you go. Both of those options are fine in my opinion, but I definitely think that you should have pity timers on them, because it just feels terrible as a player to save up for a Dreadful pack for a long time, then you open the Dreadful pack and it gives you nothing. You feel like you've just spent a ton of time on getting nothing, and that is a very, very bad feeling. It also feels terrible for new players whenever they open a Dreadful pack and like they open something terrible, or they open like their 4th or 5th Dreadful pack and get nothing from it. That is also going to make some new players not want to play the game. If you have pity timers, you at least feel as if you are progressing towards something, and that like in a couple packs I will be guaranteed to get something out of this. Also, I think this may actually make people spend more money on your game, because they will see, oh, I'm only 1 or 2 away from having the ultra rare for like certain from a Dreadful pack, so now I'm going to spend a little bit just to get there. That is something that you see in a lot of gacha games, where the pity timers actually make people spend more a lot of the time, so it makes both the players and the company happy. So I think they should definitely do this for the tier or the coffee packs. That would be a very good thing to do. It would just make them feel way less bad if you like feel that you are progressing towards something whenever you don't get anything from them. Now, I don't know what the right numbers are for the terrifying or the horrific pack, but for Dreadful I feel like 5 would be a fine number to go for. Did I skip one? No, I didn't. For the 6th change, we have the quest system. Currently, the quest system just feels really bad, like I already talked about. The reason for that is that you feel like you are forced to use certain phobies in games, and that just isn't very good, both because the phobie balance is kind of out of whack in some places, so sometimes you have to use bad phobies or very situational phobies in scenarios where they don't belong just to try and complete quests. So you are essentially throwing away games just to try and complete them, and that is not a good thing. Now, the argument that I think I saw someone give is that it would encourage people to try new stuff, but that really isn't the case. That isn't what happens here. People just throw away a couple games to get their quests done, and that isn't fun. So what I would suggest is that you change these quests to be easier or more simple. Both actually. So instead of kill 6 phobies with Klepto, it should just be kill 6 phobies with monster phobies, or deal a certain amount of damage using monster phobies or something like that, or maybe capture X points with a monster phobie. That way you automatically complete them as you are playing the game. I think that your quests should be completable in one day. Currently they are called daily quests, but no one is completing them in just one day unless they are queuing up with someone just to try and cheat the system, essentially. Which I don't blame people for doing, by the way. That's how bad the quest system is, that you have to do that. But if you change that so that people will just be able to complete it by playing, and made it so that they can complete them in one day, that would make the quest system feel a lot less frustrating and more rewarding to play with. Because, like, you know that there's a problem with it when you see people queue up together just to complete quests and just, like, play terrible phobies out without even having a match, just to make sure that their quests get done. That is a very obvious sign that the system is broken or bad, whatever you want to call it. Next up, we have map design. This is where we get to the slightly less important ones, but these are still things that I want changed, of course. They are still things that would improve the game by quite a lot. So I've just written that we should rework the bad maps in the game that lead to boring or unfun matches or frustrating scenarios. All of those things are obviously bad. We have a very bad map here. This is, in my opinion, one of the worst maps they have ever made, so I'm very happy that we are not seeing that anymore. But there are a lot of maps in the game that are just a little bit bad, or which are straight up unfun or bad, just like terrible to play on, and they should be changed. And there are a lot of changes you could do to them. I think that what they should really look at is Cast's big document he has made with a lot of maps. We are also having a lot of discussions in the Discord on how to improve those maps. But if we just look at his document here, he has a thing where he has written down criteria for good maps. So we have these 10 points that need to be fulfilled in order for us to have a good map. So for example, we could have map criteria 6, terraform optional. This means that you don't have to use a gravedigger for the maps. So a good map could be this down here, which I believe is the penny dropped, if I remember correctly. On this map, you don't feel like you are forced to use terraforming, but you can still play with it if you want to. So that is a very good map as a good example. Then we have a fail example, which is Center Stage, which is just a terrible map in my opinion. And you are pretty much forced to go Gravedigger here. If you are not bringing Gravedigger for this map, you are essentially handicapping yourself. So that is an example of one of the criteria. Then down here he has a lot of examples for the maps. If we just look at the, the ones up here, you can see all of the maps and which pages they are on. If we just jump to Lavable Ring at 74, that is one of the maps we talked about on the Discord. You can see here we have the map as it is right now. It is made in Play-to-Race map creator. And this is how Lavable Ring currently is. This is one of the new maps. And you can see then we have the criteria down here where it passes some of them. It doesn't pass triple melee opener, doesn't pass the good damage tiles, and it doesn't pass collection flexible. That is because you feel like you are forced to use either Charon, Honeybear, or Prometheus on this map, and Prometheus is supposedly the best one, at least from what I've heard. I also think Charon is pretty good though, but you feel like you are forced to use those phobies, and if you don't have them, then the game just feels terrible to play. This is one of the maps that I played on the Road to Summerfall Fears thing quite a lot, and it felt pretty terrible to play on, because it felt like I was either forced to sit way back, or I was forced to go all in, and both of those feel pretty bad to do, because I just didn't have any of those phobies that were required for it. If you then go a bit further down, he has an example of how you could fix the map, where we are taking out some of these lava tiles, which makes it a lot easier to play on, makes it feel like you are less forced to go all in, and you can also play in a lot of different ways. This opens up a lot of different things you can do. And then there are some notes below that. Not all of the maps are fixed, because some of them are pretty hard to fix. You can see, for example, here he's writing currently still evaluating which options to go with, and there's a bunch of examples of maps that you could maybe try to improve it with or play test it on. But essentially he just has all of the maps in there, and we also talk a lot about them on the Discord, how to improve them and why they are bad and stuff like that. But I would definitely encourage whoever is on the dev team making maps to look through those 10 criteria anytime that they make a new map, because if you do that and you understand how they work, you will make maps that are way more fun to play on, which are just great for the game. So that is a change that I'd also like to see. Now, of course, this is a big thing to actually do. This would be a lot of work to sit down and go through all of the maps. I'm not saying they should do all of them at once, but you could just do some of them. Some of them are completely figured out how to make them better. If you look through the document that Cast has in there, some of them are also pretty obvious what you have to do for it to make them better. So improving those would be a good first choice, and then you can look at the more difficult maps to improve after that, and whether they have to go through some larger reworks or something like that. Finally, we have the 8th change, which is just balance changes to phobies. As I've said at the beginning, the last balance patch was so damn good that it made the game feel a lot healthier, which is why I think this is the lowest priority right now. The only nerfs that I would really like to see would be to Frosty and Cupcake. Frosty should be on a 2-turn lock and Cupcake should be 250 attack buff. Outside of that, there are a few other phobies that you could maybe make arguments for nerfing too, such as Klepto and Hematic Ginsting, for example. But I don't think those are really needed or required. That's more of a if you want to kind of thing. That said, I still have this on here because there are so many phobies that need buffs in this game, and that is actually a pretty big deal, both for new players and for older players, because first of all, there are so many phobies that just don't really feel playable, which is not a good thing, obviously. But there are also some phobies which are rather high rarity, which if a new player gets, feel very bad. So for example, if you are a completely new player and you have gotten decently far into the game and you finally get to open your first Dreadful pack, you are very excited for that because you are getting your first new Ultra Rare probably. And that is something that can be a pretty big deal, and it's super exciting because Ultra Rares are so flashy and could do super cool things. And then you open it and you get Leshy. And you want to quit the game, because Leshy is a terrible phobie, and there is no doubt about it being a terrible phobie. It's just not good at all. So that is a terrible experience. It takes opening your first Dreadful pack from being something super exciting and fun to being a very, very awful experience that could make you quit the game. So balancing phobies is actually a pretty big deal too for the new player experience, at least to a certain degree. But it also just makes it more fun to play for everyone involved, whether you are an advanced player, a casual player, someone who is starting out the game and taking it seriously. Everyone loves it when the game is more balanced and has more viable options, because it just means that the games feel more different or varied instead of just being the same thing over and over, which was the big problem prior to the old balance patch. You just felt like you were playing the same game every time you queued up, which I think has gotten a lot better, but it could be even better by us having a lot more options of phobies. The same thing could be said about a lot of the very basic phobies. For example, Baby Snaky and Misanthrope are very boring ones to get, and they are also just bad phobies. So maybe you should either change them to be viable or give them some sort of niche. For example, Cast suggested that maybe we make Baby Snaky 3 movement and lower the stats a bit. That could be pretty fun. There are a lot of different ones that could be buffed in many different ways to make them more unique or more fun. I also think that Barcilla could see some pretty cool changes. That is a phobie that a lot of new players end up getting as their first high-key phobie, so that is pretty exciting for them. But then it is just not very good. So making that a bit better would be fun. Some people have suggested maybe allowing it to destroy obstacles on a low cooldown, but not create them, so that you can just mow down obstacles with it. You could also make it deal a lot of extra fire damage, or have a very high direct attack damage thing, an ability that deals a lot of direct attack damage and puts fire under the opponent. Just as some changing at the ideas. Or you could maybe even just buff the fire a lot, so that it would have a niche and being a big fire phobia or something like that. I don't know if that would really be viable, but at least that would be more fun to get for new players, instead of getting your first large phobia and then it's just not very good to play with. So there's a lot of different changes and buffs and reworks and so on that they could do for the game. But I think definitely buffing a lot of the weaker or more niche phobies would do a lot to make it more fun to play the game also. Now, these were like the 8 ideas I had for this. I don't really have much more to say for this. I think a lot of these would help on the like problems that I talked about at first. It should be pretty obvious which ones like help on the problems. Finally, I also just want to say I'm not doing this to like critique the game or because I hate phobies or anything. I'm actually doing it because I very much love the game and I want the game to succeed. That is the reason why I'm making a video like this. It's not just like to say everything is bad and I want it changed. It's because I hope that Phobies can succeed and grow into a much bigger game. If I didn't like Phobies, I wouldn't be making videos for it, obviously. So that's just like how I want to end it off. I should also include like it's a much harder thing to fix, but it would be nice if you encourage more player interaction in some way. Like for example, some games have like clan systems or things where you can play games with each other to get some form of rewards, maybe like a weekly thing where you can play a game with a friend for rewards or something like that could be good, just to encourage players to interact a bit more. But that is a problem that I think is much harder to fix and comes after fixing the first other ones that I talked about in this video. But yeah, that was essentially everything that I wanted to talk about here. If you have any other ideas or thoughts for how you could solve these problems, or if you think there are other problems that need to be solved in the game, feel free to leave a comment below and we can talk about it. Other than that, thank you for watching and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.